So this David Jaffe controversy is starting to get really out of hand. I mean, I sort of, it was on my radar because of the Vera Dark situation, which we covered on Saturday Night Hypnosis, but, no offense to Vera, but I'm not actually a viewer of hers. In fact, I've never actually seen a full Vera Dark video, so it was sort of lost on me. Obviously, he was saying some ridiculous stuff, but also not really my bag. I didn't care, I didn't have interest, but then homie decides to put out a video. This video right here, 45 minutes ago as of now, my thoughts on these content creators, and we're gonna do a reaction to it because he put my boy Hypno in the thumbnail, because the homie, obviously a clout chaser. He put a Hypno in the thumbnail, Vera in the thumbnail, Asmongold on the thumbnail, because he can only get clicks if he's using other folks' faces and content. I mean, let's be real, 45 minutes up as it currently stands, and it's gotten a little over 600 views, remarkably well for his channel. So let's see what he has to say about my thoughts on these content creators, basically just grifting up their names. Welcome back to Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idle. Before we get into it, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and let's see if he says anything of value. Spoiler alert, I doubt it.
No, I did not see the Side Scrollers podcast. Here's what I'll tell you.
Out the gate, didn't watch the Side Scrollers podcast, meaning he is unwilling to accept any sort of feedback, criticism, whatever it may be, even though he decides to start some stuff with other individuals in this sphere, but he can't even be bothered to look at what those say about him, even if it's not altogether negative. I did see a little clip of what the Side Scrollers podcast said, and frankly, it was actually far nicer than they probably could have been.
Vera Dark and I clearly don't really vibe with each other. She doesn't like me. I said some mean things about her. They were not misogynistic, but they were mean. They were intentional.
I mean, at least he acknowledges they were mean. The jury's out on whether they were misogynistic because, to be fair, they were directed at her as an individual as opposed to women everywhere. So I actually don't think you can call it misogynistic, but it definitely was douchebaggery, so I'm glad he admits that.
Actually mean. But whatever. And I don't know Asmongold to save my life, but it sounds like he may not be a fan of mine either. But Side Scrollers, or at least Stuttering Craig, that guy, I have massive issues with. I cannot,
Oh, he has massive issues with Stuttering Craig. I can't wait to hear him. Now, again, I'm not a consumer of Side Scrollers content. Again, no shame on them. Believe it or not, as a anti-woke content creator, I hate that term, I don't actually consume many other anti-woke content creators' content unless they're my friends. I watch Atreus, I watch Hypno, I watch Will of the Fans. I love their work because, you know, I'm close with them, I'm tight with them, I want to support my homies. But in general, the only episode of Side Scrollers I ever saw was the very first episode, and that's because AVGN was the guest. So, that being said, I'm of course familiar with Craig's work. I follow him on X, I think he does great stuff. So, yeah, let's see what your issues with Craig is.
I'm not even going to watch him to hate watch him. So no, I did not see it. I did not see it. I was not sexist to Vera. Stop the clowns. I was not. I was mean to her. Trust me, because I was...
Okay, so clearly this is him. This is a video cut from one of his chats, from one of his live streams. I wish he was showing what the chats would say, but whatever, we'll go from there.
Worried because I knew people would think I was. But I was like, this is not... I know people will think this is sexist or misogynistic. But it's really not. And I was checking with women. I'm like, hey, watch this for me, because maybe I'm wrong, because I can be wrong. Everybody's got a blind spot. I would hate to think I actually would say something sexist or misogynistic, but in this...
You say that, oh, everyone's got a blind spot. You know, people can be wrong, yet you're coming out here attacking an entire community for having different opinions than yourself without ever analyzing why yours might be incorrect here. Like, this is absolutely asinine, and it's something you would say to basically throw the heat off yourself. Like, oh, I can be wrong. Yeah, you say that, but actions speak louder than words.
Case, I was like, I don't think it is. But again, I could still be wrong. Educate me if I am. But my understanding of misogyny, yeah, so like the Popo says you implied that she only has a channel and audience because of her hair and her looks and because she's a woman. That's not sexist. That's not misogynistic. That's me being mean to her and saying the only thing, in my opinion, based on what I've seen of hers, that allows her to be able to do what she does is she is an attractive or semi-attractive woman talking to a bunch of nerds.
Okay. First of all, that's an incorrect assessment of Vera, because again, I don't consume her content, but I do follow her on X, and I followed her on X for a very long time. It's very clear that she is actually passionate about what she does. She cares about what she does. Unlike a lot of the folks in the space, actually does in fact play these, quote unquote bad games that to give her honest thoughts on them. People aren't listening to her because she's a woman. Do you know how many women out there don't have the platform that she has, that have tried and frankly failed? She's not an e-thought. She's not a titty streamer. She's just a gal who is admittedly decently attractive, talking about what she has to say. Now, does the attractiveness help? Absolutely. Pretty privilege is 100% a thing. Guys and girls have it. Joey Swole probably wouldn't have the audience he has if he wasn't also an attractive dude. But that being said, yeah, that's when you're saying it to be mean, and when you're saying, oh, you only have this platform because you're a woman, yeah, it's mean, but it's also incorrect, because clearly the audience is there for a reason, and the reason isn't just, oh, she's hot, because that's not enough to sustain a fan base. There has to be actual quality behind said content.
Is it mean? Oh, yeah. Is it cruel? Of course. I mean, she was similarly in both of her previous clips the same to me. And yes, it dealt with her being a woman, but that wasn't me talking about women and like, oh, women can only do this job if, or I don't like or trust women. No one can look at my channel and suggest that that's my history or that's the way I feel or any of my actions or anything. So it sounds more like what you're saying is you don't like it when someone swings back at a woman metaphorically. I would only hit a woman if she was huge and bigger than me, and she was.
Okay, I got to ask you, Jaffe, because I'm sure that maybe you'll end up seeing this, because as much as you say you're not going to hate watch stuff, you got no idea who I am, so I'm sure you'll probably end up seeing this. What about our criticisms of Alyssa Mercante? They're not because she's a woman, they're because she's an insufferable hag. So why accuse us of being sexist? And to be fair, maybe you haven't done that. I will say, I also follow you on X, and I have for a very long time. I've disliked you since long before this controversy, but can you acknowledge that maybe we're criticizing Alyssa Mercante on the content of her character, or lack thereof character, and there's no basis in sexism whatsoever, which is why we support so many great female individuals, such as Vera Dark, such as Vex Electronica, such as Savvy and Sevi, two different women, by the way. Like, it's pretty crazy that people will call out so-and-so's sexism, when really it's just we're disagreeing with women on the opposite side of the ideological aisle, not because they're women, but because we find them to be repugnant and or, usually, and retarded.
Attacking me. But metaphorically, I'll hit one all day because what do I care? It's the same thing. We're both equal at that point. Right. Okay. So, if you said that about Laura Fryer, what you said about Vera Dark, that would be misogynistic because she has experience and insight. Right. Or if I said that about Alana Pierce, what I would say about Alana Pierce is Alana Pierce has a leg up in the content creation space talking to nerds because she is very attractive as just a visual attractive woman. But she's also...
All right. Maybe a hot take. I don't know. Vera's better looking than Alana Pierce. I just throwing that out there.
So talented, experienced, she edits well, she writes well, and she's got interesting insight into the business, both as a voice actress, as a writer now in the business, and as a journalist who worked at IGN.
You don't have to be on the inside to have A, inside information, and B, knowledge of certain situations and opinions on them. I am going to steal a line from a comedian, but I've never flown a helicopter, but if I see one in a tree, I know enough to know, dude fucked up.
That's just a description of that particular woman. Now, you could argue that Vera Dark has a lot more going for her than her looks. And I'm sure some of you think she does, and that's fine. And I made it clear to say, in my opinion, based on what she said about me. I don't watch her content. She may be excellent. But based on what she said about me, and frankly, based on if you go to her page, I mean, most of her shit is just mean-spirited, ha-ha, fuck liberal tears, blah, blah, blah. So...
You just said you don't watch her content, so you're basing all this off of thumbnails, which, by the way, thumbnails and titles are meant to grab attention. But if you don't watch her content, if you don't consume her content, you don't know what's in the actual content. You're just going off of, effectively, headlines. Isn't it your side that always preaches to never judge a book by its cover, when you're quite literally here judging by the cover? If you don't watch her content, you can't say, oh, her stuff is mean-spirited, her stuff is, ha-ha, liberal tears. Look, I've talked to a lot of people about Vera based on what was going on here, because I don't want to make this video without some sort of information, and yeah, apparently Vera is like one of the least reactionary individuals within this, quote-unquote anti-woke space, which, let's be real, we do got a lot of reactionaries up in this bitch at times. So if she's one of those that actually sits down, has a middle ground, but knows how to play the algorithmic game, then good on her. She's doing no different than what, let's say, a Kotaku journalist would do, or what Alana Pierce would do, who just sang the praises of. But again, because she disagrees with you ideologically, because you don't watch her content, you don't actually know that. You're just spouting off your ineptitude.
Forgive me, if you can't point to me and show a history of anything like misogyny, sexism, cruelty, homophobia, racism, it's just not in my wheelhouse. It doesn't exist. I have blind spots like everyone else, and I might say something that's like, oh shit, I didn't realize that. But for the most part, you won't. But you go to her channel, just look at her videos. Everything's negative.
Yeah, look at her videos, which you just said you haven't done. You haven't watched them. You're just looking at thumbnails.
Everything's about the woke mind virus, for the most part. There's nothing on, and forget her talking about me, It's all about stirring up the base of people who hate and
She's talking about games that have thus far failed. I mean, look at this. Star Wars Outlaws was a failure. Veilguard was a failure. Well, what did she say? Stalker 2 was a janky, buggy mess that players were loathing out the gate. I mean, unless you were a fan of the original Stalker, then people were giving it a pass. Former Amazon Studios founder confirms Hollywood's contempt, which, by the way, was an actual article that was ran by multiple outlets. She's covering news. Again, negativity gets clicks. I, for one, don't want to always focus on the negative. I want to focus on the positive. But at the end of the day, what she's doing is no different than what the mainstream media, or really alternative media when it comes to things like Kotaku or That Part Place or Polygon or Bounding in Comics, either folks on the same side, stoke emotion for views, for clicks, because that's what makes money. The same way that your video games make money, in the same way that you're at least attempting for your channel to make money.
Feel like victims of the left, and that's fine. It's a valid business model. She does really well. But
okay, fair enough. I spoke too soon. At least he acknowledges it's a valid business model. I will give you that.
Don't come at me because I'm calling her out for it.
Calling her out for what? You said it's a valid business model, and as long as she's being honest about her thoughts and her perceptions and her beliefs, then what does it matter? If she was grifting, that would mean she'd be lying and doesn't believe this stuff. But if she actually feels this way, if she believes this, which by the way, there are very valid reasons for her to do so, that's why we're all in this level of content creation game, then what is there to call her out on aside from you don't like it?
She goes to a lot of angry men who feel like victims and feel like they're not being heard, and she happens to be really attractive. Or you know what I'm not going to say? I'm not going to say, she's an attractive woman. I like redheads. She's attractive. She's young enough to be my kid. I don't want to date her. I'm not being creepy, but I can look at someone objectively and go, oh, that's an attractive woman.
Is she young enough to be the kid that you transed, you creepy fuck?
And, sorry, but that's not sexist. It's not misogynistic. You think they don't bring in, attractive people in movies who may not be the best actors just because they're attractive? Sure, of course they do. She's too old for Pete Turtle. Dano Genesis says, your looks have nothing to do with this milestone of 49 months being a member. Thank you, buddy, you son of a bitch. Have a good one. Good night. Hey, I know what side my bread's buttered on. I had this guy in the chat the other day, Courtney Williams. And people were like, why are you flirting with Courtney? I'm like, I'm not. I can just recognize a good-looking man. I'm like, I'd love to be a good-looking dude. I'm not.
I'm glad Fat Santa here acknowledges that he is not a good-looking dude. Although, to be fair, as far as fat people goes, he's actually one of the least egregious. At least his skin looks clean. I bet you do smell weird, though.
I get it. On my best night, I'm competing with Danny DeVito for the ladies left over at the bar. Shut up. That's not nice. The point is that I get it. I'd play to that strength if I could. Hell, there's this one guy who hates me, won't put his shirt back on. He wants everybody to know he works out. He's always streaming without his fucking shirt on. And I'm not talking about Review Tech USA. That's a bit. This guy literally, part of his set is that there's no shirts within 20 yards of my camera.
Is he talking about Camelot? That's the only person I could think he'd be talking about is Camelot, but maybe Camelot has covered him. I don't know. I haven't watched Camelot stuff in a hot minute, but I'm interesting.
When I stream, I don't know what his name is. I think it's Alex. Oh no, it's Alex. Like, dude, put it fucking shirt on. It's getting weird. But hey, if I had his body, I'd probably do the same fucking thing. 1 minute says, I just realized you're hated by the right wing and the liberals. You're doing great, Jaffe. Fine with me, man.
You know what? That comment brings up a good point. There has been plenty of times where Jaffe here has gotten under the skin to the liberals for saying things that I would find objectively correct. So there is the capacity for nuance and middle ground when it comes to Jaffe. At least there used to be. I don't know if there still is, because if there still was, he wouldn't be going after Vera. That's actually what makes no sense, because there was a time when, aside from the disgusting act of transing your kid, I didn't altogether dislike Jaffe. I may disagree with him at times, but I thought that he was at least more rational than the other cucks on his side of the aisle. But again, oh, how the times have changed.
Fine with me. What do you want from me? I try to be nice to everybody. I like people. I really do. I think I like people. They're good eggs. Even the ones that call me an idiot. I don't care. We're all just trying to get by. Seriously. Vault Salt. Jaffe, why are you so concerned about why Hypnotic makes so much money? I'm not. I didn't know who he was.
Here it is. It's about time we get to my boy here, Hypno. Let's see what chicanery is afoot when it comes to how he considers your content.
Until yesterday. I don't plan on ever crossing paths with him again. He's not on my radar. I did think it was interesting. I'm always curious why. The one thing that I took away from that Hypnotic conversation was the people who don't put themselves on camera. And I'm not judging. Maybe they have a...
Let's go. Here it is. It's always the same fucking thing. Oh, those that don't put themselves on camera. Dude, you make video games. You don't star in movies. Clearly, you have art that you want to put out there that doesn't have to do with you and your persona and your visage and whatnot. You have characters in your games. How is it any different for Hypnotic or really any other creator out there that uses an avatar? It's because it creates a unique sense of immersion that is different than who you are in real life. The same way in video games, if you got a character creator, you might not create yourself. I don't make myself when I play video games. And character creators, I usually make stunningly hot women or Bruce Campbell. Those are my two go-tos. So when you've got this, I will actually hear out what you have to say, but it's an argument that I'm damn tired of, because yeah, sometimes why do voice actors voice act instead of do live person acting? That's what they're good at. That's what they want to do. There's a market for all sorts of things. Let's hear what you got to say, Davey.
A job, and they're going to say some salty shit, or maybe they feel insecure about the way they look, or maybe they're famous. Maybe it's like, dude, you're the guy who does the news. I don't fucking know. But I would tell you that it's always weird when people are just like hiding behind an alias. Just who are you? Why do you need to do that? But that doesn't negate whatever his points are. If they're valid points, they're valid points.
Okay, at least you go that far. At least you say that valid points are valid. But it's not weird. Since the inception of YouTube, people have put themselves, whether it be doing skits in character, or whether it be doing, again, avatar based. Again, everyone knew the Game Grumps, or prior to the Game Grumps, everyone knew Aaron Hansen as Ego Raptor. Ego Raptor was just a drawing that occasionally moved and didn't go by the name Aaron Hansen. He went by Ego Raptor. He was still himself, but it was a persona. It was a character. You guys think that Leon Idol is my real name? No, I'm sure you guys all know that that's not the case, because very clearly on YouTube, you put on personas. Now, to be fair, I don't act any different than I do in real life than I do on camera. This is all 100% the same, by the way. But yeah, for privacy purposes, don't put my real name out there. But plenty of other people don't either, whether it be for privacy, whether it be because they want to be a character, it's insane to me to find that weird. Do you have some weird moral grandstanding where you think that because you use your real name or your real face or whatnot, that makes you better than the other individual? People have been using personas since the dawn of time. Think of all the great American writers. What was the guy that wrote Huckleberry Finn and the Adventures of Tom Sawyer. I'm blanking because I'm an absolute moron. Not John Wayne. Mark Twain. His real name was Samuel Clemens, but he used a pen name when he was writing these great American novels. Stan Lee. Stan Lee's real name wasn't Stan Lee. It's Stanley Liebert. He's the face of comic books, and he didn't use his real name. So what does it matter?
My point is that's all I've thought about as it relates to Hypnotic. But Pete Turtle's the same. Stoner Joe. Pete Turtle's exactly the same. I'm like, dude, you tell me you're this alpha masculine guy. You're good looking. The ladies all come running. Well, show me. You spoke about it to guest on your last stream. Well, yeah, because that was the stream he was on, but I haven't thought about it since. I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't really remember the conversation other than going, I didn't think he was. It's wrong to say I don't think he was. You know what? I'm not going to say anything because all it's going to do is, look, he should go with God, have a good life. He doesn't like me. He thinks I'm a piece of shit. And that's totally fine. He thinks I abuse my kids. He thinks I'm a bad dad. And
sounds pretty base considering you trans your autistic child, but anyway.
No matter what I said to him, no matter what I said to Stuttering Craig, no matter what I would say to Melanie Mack, which I talked to her as well, you know, it doesn't matter when you discuss it in good faith. That
bullshit. Do you know how many conversations I've had with individuals, both on their end and on my end, where minds were changed because the conversation was made in good faith? In fact, if you and I were to have a conversation, if you actually had it in good faith, I bet minds could be changed. And maybe, just maybe, you can convince my mind about certain things. I'm open to it. I have had my mind changed. But don't give us this dribble about good faith when you have had multiple individuals on your show up to this point, whether it be Vera, whether it be Kata, whether it be Hypnotic. Apparently, you've had Melanie Mack on. I didn't see that. If none of their minds were changed, maybe you're just not making very good points. Maybe you're on the incorrect side. Or if your mind hasn't been changed after hearing multiple people that have roughly a similar worldview and ideology, maybe you're the one in the echo chamber burying your head in the sand, unwilling to actually consider that other people may be correct. But this idea of coming in good faith to you means that, oh, they should join your side after hearing you out, apparently.
That's not what they're about. And so what's the point, right?
I'll tell you what the point is. And this is where because I'm going to be real. Listening to this was honestly kind of cancer. I thought it would be a lot more fun and entertaining, and it really wasn't. But that being said, we're 21 and a half minutes into the recording, so definitely can't scrap this because a lot of work was put into it. And by a lot of work, I mean hitting the pause and unpause button. But that's not the point. The point is, every now and again, he would say something that I'd be like, okay, you know what? Fair enough. I'm glad he acknowledges this. He does have more self-awareness than your average leftist. I do appreciate that. But at the end of the day, he was wrong about so much more than he was right just in this. But I actually do almost appreciate that he seems pretty sincere. He's so caught up in his echo chamber and his own ideology. He doesn't realize where the real criticism lies. He doesn't realize what it is that we're trying to do, what it is that we're trying to get through to him, what it is that we are saying. Wants to immediately take it and whatever his own perverted, distorted, caricature version of our beliefs are. And you know what? When folks are that far gone, fair enough. Maybe I'm naive to think that a legitimate one-on-one conversation, especially since I'm far more moderate than almost anybody he's talked to thus far, could maybe change him, could maybe get him to understand some of the more nuanced points. To be fair, considering how many times I made fun of his trans kid in this video, that probably won't ever happen. But hey, the door is open. Look, I got my opinions on that, but those are very different than the opinions on fucking video games, for example. But again, that's neither here nor there. The point is, homie doesn't want a good faith conversation. He wants a conversation, at least the way it seems, the way it comes off after watching this video. You can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, Davey boy. You don't want a good faith conversation. You want a conversation where you change someone's mind. And if you got good enough points, if you're able to articulate yourself in a way that makes logical sense, then fair enough. That's what you should want, and that's what you should try and do. But maybe if you haven't successfully done so thus far, it's because you don't actually make those sort of points. Maybe you actually are wrong. And I don't see you, acknowledging that you may be wrong. You say you will. You say you could have blind spots. But what have you changed thus far after all these conversations with multiple different individuals? Not a damn thing so far as I've seen it. But those are my opinions. Let me know yours in the comments down below. Or let me know on X, where you can find me at Bolt the Word. And please do subscribe. I am a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news every day. Not always about what's going on in the video game industry and controversies, but anime, movies, music, Magic the Gathering, you name it. Check me out on Instagram at wordsofparadise_Leon. And become a member for $4.99 a month. You can join the Discord. Choose the articles I go over on a day-to-day basis. Choose the videos I react to on my Friday night live streams. And of course, get involved with over 140 other vital idols. We are a bright, beautiful, glowing, vibrant community that I cannot wait to grow even further because we do care about diversity. Bowling on kind of diversity of thought. If that's interesting to you, join the Discord, hit subscribe. And until next time, it is all here in the Nerdosphere. This has been Words of Paradise.